The period is early 1800s. America is a new nation born out of revolution, and the inspiration for a new American culture is at hand. Noah Webster created the American Spelling Book, in which he created variations of words from the British English to create American English. This new nationalistic pride encouraged authors like Washington Irving to create American fictional legends and tall tales, such as The Tale of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle. Freedom of the press allowed a larger population of the common people to enjoy newspapers.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
I don't want any paper!
Paper!
For wealthier women, special ladies' magazines with advice for cleaning, child-rearing, and being the perfect wife allowed it for women to be confined in a cult of domesticity. As the mid-1800s approached, rural men created a strong culture around taverns, which served as a meeting place for drinking, smoking, and games such as cards, dice, and board games. Because of the social and gender norms throughout the 19th century, women were often in the company of other women, playing card games, sewing, reading, and other ladylike activities that required women to stay inside of the home. As towns turned into cities, opportunities for entertainment expanded as theaters became increasingly popular. Theaters held a variety of shows such as Shakespeare, opera, orchestral music, and others. Minstrel shows and circuses became increasingly popular with the masses, allowing for showy music and strange acts such as freak shows encouraged people of leisure.
As the river of time continues to glide along, the evolution of entertainment continues to develop and flourish throughout America. The early 1800s marked the rise of Romanticism as their European counterparts influenced American culture. American Romanticism emphasized emotion, individualism, and personality over rationalism and the constraints of religion. Additionally, Romanticism emphasized an individual relationship with God, which opposed to strict Calvinism. Such renowned writers during this period were Edgar Allan Poe, Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Walt Whitman, Emily Dickinson, Mark Twain, and F. Scott Fitzgerald. Wild West shows soon became popular as well. They were traveling vaudeville performances in the United States and Europe. The first and prototypical Wild West show was Buffalo Bills, formed in 1883 and lasted until 1913. The shows introduced many Western performers and personalities, and a romanticized version of the American Old West, to a wide audience. Beyond representing a promise for the Easterners, the shows were a winning combination of history, patriotism, and adventure that managed to create an enduring spirit of the unsettled West and capture audiences' hearts throughout America and even Europe.
The antebellum, not in association with Lady Antebellum, was a period of increasing sectionalism that led up to the Civil War. In all honesty, people did not have leisure time. Women would do embroidery and quilts, and men would work with wood, but it was usually for a chore that they would have to accomplish. People in general, but more likely the rich, would read and do fine art and play music. As time continued around the late 1800s and after the Civil War, public space became more popular and people flocked to art galleries, museums, and attended concerts. Around 1880, Coney Island became famous for having the first roller coaster and being the poor man's paradise. Most importantly, sports became a very important part in American entertainment. Major League Baseball, woohoo, go Nationals, was and will remain America's pastime. It was the first national sport and it was easy to play and fun to watch. During the Civil War, to pass the time, baseball was played by the soldiers to entertain themselves. Did you know that the 7th inning stretch was created by President Taft because he couldn't sit through a game? Football nowadays is the more popular sport, but back in the late 1800s during urbanization, football was a sport reserved for construction workers. During the fall, construction was put on hold due to cold weather and snow, so construction workers, who were generally big and strong men, would go and play football. Horse racing and the gambling it encouraged and boxing were also major forms of public entertainment. The 1920s was an era of prosperity, flappers, and jazz. Dancing halls were by far the most popular, where liquor ran rampant and the Charleston was developed. Silent movies were becoming popular, and soon sound was introduced, the first talkie being the jazz singer. However, stockbrokers went nuts and the stock market crashed on Black Tuesday, October 29, 1929, leading to the Great Depression. To alleviate stress among the public, the president, like FDR in his fireside chats, would address the populace with radio broadcasts. The entertainment industry had started to liven up people's lives with radio talk shows and audio dramas. For the slightly wealthy, large-scale movies, usually based on escapism and comedy, were produced. For example, I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang and Horse Feathers. Walt Disney would start creating our favorite Disney films.
Soon after World War II started, the U.S. got a depression and a very popular pastime became movie watching, which reflected off the state of the war. Many movies such as Casablanca, G.I. Joe, and Since You Went Away became instant classics and were loved by many. Also, during this time, the U.S. entered what was known as the golden age of comic books such as Batman and Superman. The two leading companies, Marvel and Timely, which later became DC Comics, quickly became a must-have for boys and men of all ages. Around 1940, the swing took off as a popular dance for many American youth. In the mid-1950s, the golden age of comic books had died down a bit, but this was quickly replaced by television shows displaying homes of suburbia and ideal communities that were erected after the war. Many shows soared above the rest, such as I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver, and Gunsmoke. Disneyland was created and opened by Walt Disney and quickly became a hotspot for many families, along with Elvis Presley being named the King of Pop and topped off the charts with some of his songs like That's Alright and Good Rockin' Tonight. College football first takes off at this time and becomes very popular. During the 60s, however, color TV, hi-fi record players, and better cars took over the household. Elvis and Sinatra became more popular, but eventually moved out of the way as the Beatles take center stage in 1964. Also, they bid farewell to a fantastic entertainer, Walt Disney. In the 70s, disco parties were becoming quite popular and the Atari was first released, defining the electronic entertainment industry during this time. Hardcore rock and roll became increasingly more mainstream as it reflected the troubled youth of the era. Also, pet rocks became insanely popular and the creator sold about 1.5 million pet rocks, becoming a millionaire. Soon after, in the 80s, a new wave of gaming took place with the release of the NES and later the original Game Boy, which would be the leader of handheld consoles for almost 2 decades. The Rubik's Cube was first released to the public and became widely popular among hundreds of young adults. Many blockbuster hits of this time were released, such as Indiana Jones, Ghostbusters, and The Empire Strikes Back. The 90s were considered the digital stone age due to the internet being on dial-up, phones were bulky things you left in your car, and Google's search engine only weird people used. Movies, music, and TV saw radical changes in mediums. Nirvana and the work of Tupac influenced a lot of the actions performed by young adults, as did the release of new shows like Saturday Night Live, Seinfeld, and the creation of South Park. Also, there was a movie renaissance where Disney created many beloved movies such as Tarzan, The Lion King, Pocahontas, Beauty and the Beast, and many others. The release of Jurassic Park showed many of the new technological advances the movie business was now able to produce. A fairly large competition was between the Nintendo Corporation and Sega. This displayed the first face-off between consoles that persists to this day.
So meet me at the river dawn. Say meeting in a rising tide. Say we'll climb aboard and look for freedom.